The years 2021 to 2022 are etched vividly in my memory as a particularly challenging time for everyone in the Solomon Islands. It was during this period that COVID-19 struck the nation, bringing life to a standstill. I had traveled to the village in Shortland from Australia to spend my holidays, but instead, I found myself in the midst of a nationwide lockdown aimed at curbing the spread of the virus. The usually vibrant community was on halt, and the atmosphere was tense as people struggled to cope with the unprecedented situation. The border between Papua New Guinea, PNG, and Solomon Islands was closed, but for communities along the border, this posed a significant challenge. The border crossing was their primary source of income and access to essential goods. Despite the government's promise to provide essential services during the closure, unfortunately, little to no assistance materialized, leaving these communities vulnerable and struggling to cope. Despite the hardships, people along the border respected the law and refrained from crossing, enduring hunger and frustration due to the government's failure to provide essential services. The communities of Komelai, Harappa, Laumana, and Gaumai, collectively known as Zone 5, were particularly affected. These villages, located along the border, suffered greatly due to the lack of support and assistance from the government, exacerbating their already challenging situation. We were disheartened to hear that villages around Nila and Kulatanai had received some assistance, thanks to the occasional visits from patrol boats and ships. However, our communities in Zone 5 Komelai, Harappa, Laumana, and Gaumai were entirely forgotten, with no signs of aid or support. It was as if we had been left to fend for ourselves, without any attention or care from the authorities. The cumulative effect of frustrations and difficulties drove the Zone 5 community to take matters into their own hands. Despite the risks, they crossed the border to access essential supplies like fuel and food from nearby shops in Bougainville, as their small gardens were insufficient to meet their needs. However, when they approached the police response team, PRT, base in Harappa, seeking assistance or guidance, they were met with indifference. The PRT personnel stated that border control was a government decision, washing their hands of the matter. Instead, they warned the community that crossing the border would result in arrest, leaving the people with no choice but to continue their precarious existence. The first border crossing occurred on February 26, 2022, without the knowledge of the police response team, PRT, base in Harappa. It wasn't until a few days later, when the PRT received a report from news outlets in Bougainville, that they became aware of the incident. Subsequently, the police in Bin and Solomon Islands made contact with each other to coordinate a response, agreeing to make arrests if another crossing took place. Despite warnings from authorities that another border crossing would result in arrest, the desperate situation faced by individual families, struggling to put food on the table for their children, drove them to continue crossing. I personally witnessed these events while in the village, where we often went without food for entire days. The dire circumstances left people with no choice but to risk arrest to meet their basic needs. The second border crossing occurred on March 5, 2022, and resulted in the arrest of individuals who had attempted to cross into Papua New Guinea to secure food for their families and community. Despite the previous warnings, the desperation for food and basic necessities led these individuals to risk arrest, highlighting the dire situation faced by the community. Following the arrest of several community members, the people of Zone 5 organized a peaceful protest to meet with the police response team, PRT. However, the situation escalated when one of the PRT personnel used offensive language towards the mothers and protesters, leading to a heated exchange. Fortunately, calm was eventually restored and reconciliation was achieved. The incident prompted authorities to take action, and although it took an additional week, essential supplies were finally delivered to the village.